The sun hung high over Buckhead, casting sharp reflections off the towering glass buildings that lined the streets of one of Atlanta's wealthiest neighborhoods. Inside Flying Eagle Motors, a luxury car dealership catering to the city's elite, Sophia Anderson stood behind her mahogany desk, surveying the showroom floor with the quiet confidence of someone who believed they were in control. At 47, she had spent 2 decades in luxury auto sales, honing her ability to distinguish between serious buyers and time wasters. In her world, image was everything, and she prided herself on knowing exactly who belonged and who didn't. The soft chime of the entrance bell pulled her attention toward the door. A man walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, mid-40s, his navy hoodie, dark jeans, and worn-out sneakers clashing with the polished marble floors and glistening Bentleys and Maseratis on display. Daniel Carter took in the showroom with an unreadable expression, his eyes briefly locking onto Sophia's. Her judgment was swift and absolute, not a buyer. Sophia turned to her sales associate, Ethan, and murmured under her breath, "Don't waste your time. He's just looking." Ethan hesitated, glancing between her and the man. Something about him felt different, but he knew better than to question Sophia's instincts. She had built a career on reading people, and her judgments, whether fair or not, were rarely challenged. But Daniel Carter wasn't just looking. He strolled toward a brand new 2024 Range Rover Autobiography, stopping beside the sleek black SUV. His fingers ran lightly along its flawless finish before he turned and walked directly toward Sophia's desk. His calm presence unsettled her, but she kept her polished demeanor intact. "Excuse me," he said, his voice even, polite. "I'm interested in that Range Rover over there. I'd like to know more about it." Sophia barely concealed her sigh. She had seen this before, men who walked in, hoping to impress someone with a test drive they had no intention of following through on. Still, she forced a tight smile. "That's a fully loaded autobiography model," she said coolly. "Top-tier luxury, $165,000. Daniel nodded. "Sounds like what I'm looking for." Sophia folded her arms. "Are you aware of our financing options? A purchase like that requires either substantial credit or an upfront payment." His expression didn't change. "I won't need financing." Sophia chuckled politely, but there was an edge to it. "I see. Well, if you're serious about purchasing, we'll need to run a soft credit check before moving forward. It's company policy." Ethan stiffened beside her. That wasn't company policy. But Daniel didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black card holder, sliding it open with effortless ease. "I'd like to test drive it." Sophia's smile thinned. "We don't offer test drives on vehicles at that price point without verified proof of income," she said smoothly. "You understand." Daniel's lips curved slightly, almost as if he had expected this. "Oh, I understand." What Sophia didn't understand was that her next decision would change everything. Chapter 2: A Costly Assumption, The Moment of Truth. The tension in the showroom was palpable, yet Sophia Anderson remained unmoved, standing firm in her quiet confidence. She had dealt with men like Daniel Carter before, or so she thought. Over the years, she had seen plenty of people walk in, pretend to be serious buyers, only to walk away the moment real money was mentioned. And she was sure that this man was no different. But something was off. Daniel didn't argue or push back. He didn't storm out like other men she had turned away before. Instead, he simply studied her, his face calm, unreadable, as though he were taking mental notes. Then, with the same eerie calm, he spoke again. "What about cash buyers?" Sophia blinked. "Excuse me?" "If someone wanted to pay in full, no financing, no credit check, Would that change your test drive policy? A slow, amused smile crossed her lips. She had heard every excuse in the book from men who wanted to sit behind the wheel of a six-figure car. She almost laughed. "I appreciate your enthusiasm," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "But I'm sure you can understand that we have policies in place for a reason." For the first time, a flicker of amusement crossed Daniel's face. "I see." His hands slipped into his pockets as he tilted his head slightly. "So what would it take?" Sophia's smile thinned. "I just told you," she said, her patience beginning to fray. "We require proof of serious intent. Our vehicles are highly sought after and we can't have—" "I understand." Daniel cut her off smoothly. His tone was polite, but there was a quiet authority in his voice that sent a ripple of unease through Ethan, who had been watching the exchange unfold. "I'm just trying to figure out where the bar is," Daniel continued, his voice calm but deliberate. "What does a serious customer look like to you?" Silence. For the first time, Sophia hesitated. A flicker of something flashed in her expression. Uncertainty, maybe even doubt. But just as quickly, she smothered it beneath a polished professional mask. "I think we're done here," she said crisply. "If you'd like to browse, feel free, but I have other customers to assist." Ethan expected Daniel to push back, maybe even walk out in frustration, but he didn't. Instead, he just nodded. The corner of his mouth tugged upward in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Understood." And with that, he turned and walked away. But something about the way he moved, slow, deliberate, almost calculating, made the hair on the back of Ethan's neck stand up. He had a hunch. Sophia Anderson had just made a mistake. Chapter 3. The Unraveling Begins. The showroom at Flying Eagle Motors hummed with quiet luxury, but beneath its polished surface, an undercurrent of tension was beginning to take shape. Sophia Anderson had dismissed Daniel Carter with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, convinced that she had handled yet another joyrider looking to waste her time. But something felt different this time. Ethan, who had been standing nearby, couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in his gut. The way Daniel had nodded so calmly before walking away? That wasn't defeat. That was observation. And he wasn't leaving. Instead, Daniel lingered in the showroom, casually inspecting a Mercedes-Benz G-Class, running his fingers along the chrome handle, as if admiring it. Ethan watched as one of the junior salesmen, Jared, hesitated before stepping forward, clearly unsure how to approach a customer who had just been brushed off by the manager. "Hey there, sir," Jared said, putting on his best salesman grin. "Need any help with that one?" Daniel turned, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, actually. I was looking at the Range Rover earlier, but I was told test drives are off limits unless I prove I'm serious. That true?" Jared blinked, momentarily thrown off. Well, I mean..." Before he could stumble through an answer, Sophia appeared beside him like a shadow. Her lips still curved in that polished professional smile, but her eyes were sharp. "Jared, I'll take it from here." Jared looked like he wanted to say something, but one glance at Sophia's steely gaze, and he backed away, disappearing toward the reception desk. Daniel watched the exchange with quiet amusement. "You sure do keep a tight leash on your employees," he mused. Sophia didn't bite. "I thought I made myself clear," she said smoothly. "We cater to a specific clientele here, and we can't accommodate every request." A beat of silence. Then Daniel chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You know, I've been to a lot of dealerships," he said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Some good, some bad, But I've never had someone work this hard to not sell me a car. Sophia's expression hardened. That's not what's happening here. No? Daniel tilted his head slightly. Then let's make it easy. I'll write a check right now. Full amount. No financing, no games, just business. Ethan, who had been pretending not to listen from behind the desk, felt his stomach tighten. Sophia stared at Daniel for a long second, her fingers twitching slightly at her sides. She wasn't stupid. If he really was a cash buyer, shutting him down outright could backfire spectacularly. But she wasn't convinced, and she wasn't about to be proven wrong in front of her own team. That's a generous offer, she said, her voice silky smooth. But as I said, it's company policy. You'd need to provide documentation before we can move forward. Daniel held her gaze for a moment. Then, slowly, he pulled out his wallet and flipped it open. Inside sat a black American Express Centurion card. Ethan's eyes widened. Sophia didn't move. The silence stretched as Daniel let her take it in. Then, with an almost lazy motion, he tucked the card back into his pocket. No test drive, huh? He said finally, his voice laced with something Ethan couldn't quite place. Sophia lifted her chin, her professional mask still intact. I'm afraid not. Daniel studied her for another long beat. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Ethan could feel it in his gut. Sophia Anderson had just stepped into something she wasn't ready for. Chapter 4. The Moment of Reckoning. The weight of the silence in Flying Eagle Motors was suffocating. Sophia Anderson stood stiffly, her jaw set, hands clasped in front of her, as if holding on to the last shred of control she had. She had just dismissed Daniel Carter, a man who had flashed a Centurion card, the kind reserved for the wealthiest elite, and yet she had still refused him. And now, something was shifting in the air. Ethan swallowed hard. Across the room, Daniel didn't storm out. He didn't raise his voice. He simply walked past the rows of gleaming cars with a slow, deliberate ease, as if he owned the place. Then, the glass doors swung open. A sharply dressed man in his mid-50s stepped inside with an air of authority. His tailored navy suit was crisp, and his polished leather shoes barely made a sound against the tiled floor. His eyes swept across the showroom, locking onto Daniel. And then, his face lit up. There he is! Ethan's stomach dropped. Sophia's spine went rigid. The man strode forward, his hand outstretched. Daniel, I was just about to call you. Daniel cracked a small, knowing smile as he took the man's hand with an easy familiarity. Good to see you, Elliot, he said smoothly. Was just having a look around. Elliot chuckled, clapping him on the shoulder. I told you this was one of our finest locations. You'll love it here. And that was the moment Sophia realized she had made a mistake, a colossal career-ending mistake. She stiffened, her pulse hammering against her ribs. Wait, her voice was quieter now, more cautious. You know each other? Elliot finally turned to look at her, blinking. Of course. Then, with a broad grin, he gestured toward Daniel. Meet Daniel Carter, the new CEO of Flying Eagle Motors. The words dropped like a bombshell. Ethan didn't move, neither did anyone else. But Sophia, her lips parted slightly, her breath shallow. She stood there frozen, the weight of realization crashing down on her. The man she had just dismissed. The man she had judged on sight. The man she had refused to sell a car to, was her new boss. Daniel just watched her, his expression unreadable. Then he let out a slow exhale through his nose, sliding his hands into his pockets. Miss Anderson, he said, his voice even, controlled. You just refused to sell a car to your CEO. The entire showroom fell silent. Employees exchanged glances, some in shock, some in poorly hidden amusement. Ethan could feel it, the shift in power, the unraveling of everything Sophia had built. And for the first time since he had met her, she looked afraid. 5. A new beginning for Flying Eagle Motors. The air inside. Flying Eagle Motors was heavy with silence, but something had changed. The tension that once hovered over the employees like a storm cloud had begun to dissipate. Sophia Anderson stood frozen, her normally poised demeanor crumbling under the weight of what had just unfolded. The realization of her mistake, her arrogance, her bias, her misplaced authority, hit her like a freight train. She had spent years commanding this showroom, determining who was worthy of the cars they sold. But in a matter of minutes, she had lost everything. But Daniel Carter wasn't here for revenge. He wasn't interested in humiliating her further. He had seen this kind of story play out too many times, and he had no patience for it. With a composed expression, he turned his attention to Elliot, the regional director, who looked just as stunned as everyone else in the room. "We have a serious problem here," Daniel said, his voice even but unyielding. "This isn't about one employee, it's about a culture that allows this type of discrimination to thrive." Elliot swallowed hard, nodding. "You're absolutely right. We'll need to make immediate changes." Daniel looked around at the other employees, Ethan, Jared, and the rest of the sales team. Their expressions ranged from shock to something that looked almost like relief. For years, they had seen customers treated differently based on who they were, not on their ability to buy. Today, they had seen their manager finally held accountable. Daniel took a slow breath. From this moment forward, this dealership will operate differently. No more assumptions, no more gatekeeping. We don't decide who deserves respect. Every customer who walks through these doors is treated with the same level of professionalism. A murmur rippled through the room. Ethan, who had watched countless potential buyers dismissed for the wrong reasons, felt a sense of hope rise in his chest. Daniel turned back to Sophia, whose face was drained of color. "This company does not tolerate discrimination, and based on what I've witnessed today, Sophia, this is where we part ways." Sophia's lips parted as if she wanted to protest, but no words came out. The authority she once held had vanished. She had built her career on assumptions, but now she had become the victim of her own misguided judgments. Without another word, she turned on her heel and walked out. The silence lingered for a few moments after she was gone. Then, slowly, it shifted. The employees who had been watching anxiously began to exchange glances, nodding almost imperceptibly. The atmosphere inside Flying Eagle Motors felt different now. As if something toxic had finally been lifted. Daniel turned back to the team, his expression firm but inviting. "We have work to do," he said. "Let's build something better." And for the first time in years, Flying Eagle Motors had a future worth believing in. The important lesson here is about the power of fairness and integrity, treating people with respect, doing what's right, and standing by your values no matter what. The story of Daniel Carter and Flying Eagle Motors serves as a powerful reminder that integrity and fairness are non-negotiable in any professional or personal setting. It reveals how bias and assumptions can cloud judgment, leading to irreversible consequences. Sophia Anderson believed she had the authority to decide who was worthy, but her actions ultimately cost her everything. True leadership isn't about controlling others or gatekeeping opportunities. It's about respecting people for who they are, not how they appear. Daniel's approach highlights that real change starts with holding people accountable, fostering inclusivity, and creating environments where respect is the standard. When we lead with fairness, we open doors for opportunity, trust, and growth. This story teaches us that the way we treat others defines us far more than any title, position, or wealth ever could. In the end, character and integrity will always matter more than appearances. And that brings us to the end of this incredible story. What happened at Flying Eagle Motors wasn't just about one mistake. It was about accountability, fairness, and the power of standing up for what's right. Daniel Carter didn't just expose a problem. He set a new standard for respect and integrity in the workplace. This story is a reminder that the way we treat people matters and that assumptions can have real consequences. If you found this story thought-provoking, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed something like this? How would you have handled it? I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy stories that challenge the way we see the world, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. More powerful, eye-opening stories are coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.